Hey everyone, thanks for being here. My name's Nick and I'm a volunteer with the PSSD network. Earlier last year, we at the PSSD network conducted a survey on Reddit to try to better understand how we could engage with the community. And a lot of people told us that they had a lot of questions about the research that was being conducted by Professor Roberto Melcangi, and they wanted to understand it better. So we went ahead and made another survey, and we got a lot of questions. The survey was to ask the community what they wanted to hear from Melcangi. And we got well over 100 questions, and we did our best to consolidate and get the most relevant and appropriate questions. So today, with us, we have Professor Roberto himself, Professor Roberto Melcangi, and our goal is to answer the community's questions the best that we can to help get more people familiar with the research. So, Professor, without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself?
Morning to everybody, and thank you for the opportunity also to reply to your question.
All right, thank you. So, to start, how and why did you start researching PSSD?
We started the PSSD because more or less 10 years ago, we started with the post-SSRI syndrome. And then 5 years ago, we have been contacted by a patient that was treated with paroxetine and reported the symptomatology of the PSSD. And what we caught my attention was a similarity between the symptoms between the PFS and PSSD. And moreover, for us was also important also the finding that in literature was already reported that the SSRI also may also influence the level of the neurosteroids. The neurosteroids are the molecule that we have already demonstrated to play a role in the PFS. Was very, very interesting for us. For this reason, we started also with the PSSD. Before we started collecting by questionnaire the symptoms of the patient, and on this basis also we have set up also an experimental model. Indeed, we have a basic research, so basically we work on the animal model.
Ever heard of PSSD prior to that?
No, because I mean, in literature, you have a lot of observation with the treatment with SSRI itself. But indeed, also many researchers evaluated the effect during the treatment, but not at the suspension. That is the main problem, I believe, of the PSSD patient, the suspension of the drugs.
For sure. Well, thanks for taking on that challenge. It definitely means a lot to the community.
Yeah.
So what is your current hypothesis for the cause of PSSD? Like, is it neuroinflammation, you think, or epigenetic changes, autoimmune, or any other neurological alterations?
But we believe that the etiopathogenesis, I mean the origin, the mechanism involved in the PSSD are due to multifactorial causes. I mean, there is the neuroinflammation, the neurodegeneration, and there is a lot of aspects that interact each other. And in particular, we believe that for the PSSD, the main, even if the patient have also a peripheral symptomatology, the main problem of the PSSD is the nervous system. This is our first hypothesis.
So what are you researching right now, and how do you think that this might lead to more recognition of PSSD?
As I told you, we are exploring in the animal model, and in particular, we have taken in consideration the effect of the paroxetine, because in our opinion, the paroxetine have the major incidence of the side effect in comparison to the other SSRIs. So that is the reason, because we are working with the paroxetine. And in particular, we are considering the experimental model, what happens during the treatment and what happens at the withdrawal. And we have observed and reported also by published observation that some effects are present both during the treatment and also persist with the withdrawal, while the other effects occur only at the withdrawal, I mean with the suspension of the drug. And in particular, as I told you, we have already published that there is a persistent alteration of the neurosteroids. So these molecules that are important physiological regulator for the nervous system, and the level are altered with the withdrawal of the paroxetine. Moreover, we have also reported alteration in gut functionality and in the microbiota, intestinal microbiota, which is the bacterial population present in the gut. And in our opinion, that is extremely important because there is a strong relationship between the gut and the brain. So also we believe that it is more easy to intervene on the gut and then to have also an effect in the brain. And then we have also recently published, and that in our opinion is extremely important, that by a genomic analysis, that in our animal model, during the withdrawal of the drug, there is also a persistent alteration in gene coding for neurotransmitter and coding for neuroinflammation. So we believe that we may put together altered neurotransmitter, neuroinflammation, neurodegeneration, and neurosteroid levels. So this is maybe the picture that put all together this aspect.
So with that said, have you made any major findings, and if so, what are they?
But the major findings, as I told you, are alteration in gut microbiota and in neurosteroids. So we believe that is important also, like a diagnostic marker, like criteria. Of course, will be also very important to have other biomarker. And indeed, if you have the possibility, I mean, you have started with preliminary observation. We intend also to evaluate also the macroRNAs. The macroRNAs are the small and non-coding RNA molecules that regulate the gene transcription, the gene. And this molecule have also the good characteristic that may be considered the ideal biomarkers. I mean, including accessibility, high specificity, and also sensitivity. The macroRNAs are now amply utilized as biomarker in the oncology field, but also for neurodegenerative disorder. So if you have a success before in the experimental model and then in order to translate in the patient, we believe that may be a good biomarker also.
Fantastic. Great to hear.
The idea, I mean.
Yeah, I see what you mean. What are the similarities or differences in researching PSSD and PFS? Is there a lot of overlap between the symptoms of these two conditions, or would you say that PSSD and PFS are likely the same syndrome, just triggered by different meds?
That in my opinion is extremely interesting. That there is an overlapping between the kind of symptoms. I mean, to have the same symptoms does not mean that the origin, I mean, the mechanism involved are always the same. Mm-hmm. We see similarity, as I told you, in terms of alteration in neurosteroids, alteration in gut microbiota. Of course, it's not exactly the same, but is very similar. But we believe that one a possible difference between the PFS and the PSSD is about the andrological aspect. I mean about the peripheral effect that you have in your sexual activity. Indeed, in case of the PFS, we have also already published that there is alteration in corpora cavernosa, which is the structure of the penis, while this does not occur in the PSSD. So our final message is that in the case of PFS, we have a compromission of the nervous system and also of the peripheral organs, the peripheral targets. Why, in our opinion, for the PSSD, the compromission is higher in the nervous system, and there is not a real compromission in the periphery, with the exception of the gut microbiota. That is the common point.
Interesting. Thanks for that clarification. That neurosteroid allopregnanolone, if I'm saying that correctly, so what role does allopregnanolone play in the development of PSSD, and could its dysregulation be a key factor?
The allopregnanolone, like in the PFS, is altered and at the withdrawal. And but indeed, at least for the PFS, we are exploring a therapy based on the allopregnanolone. For the PSSD, we have other idea. I mean, we have also already published that there is an alteration in other steroids, the pregnenolone, which is a precursor of the allopregnanolone. So we are more confident in this molecule for the PSSD. Indeed, we have already started preliminary observation in the experimental model in which we are evaluating a possible therapy with the pregnenolone.
All right. So next question, which is all of the research to date has been with male rats. Why is this? Do you anticipate that the results might be different for female rats versus male rats?
That is a very important aspect. I mean, what happens in male and female, I mean, the name is the gender medicine, now is extremely important in many fields. And it is extremely important because the medicine is moving toward a personalized medicine. I mean, you may have an approach which is different in one patient in comparison to the other patient, and of course, in the two sex. And that is important because if you started from the neurosteroids or the sex steroids, these are important regulator of the sex difference. And so we have also the project to started also to analyze what happens in the female animal model. And that will be extremely important. Usually the people started with the male because the observation of the male are more easy. I mean, the experimental model are more easy because in the female we have the estrocycles is more variable. So that is the main reason. But we have already planned also, if you have the possibility, of course, and that is not only the scientific interest, but also how to founding this research. We are also interested to explore this aspect. And I expected that at least the neurosteroids pattern may be different after paroxetine suspension. Because also in other experimental models, the neurosteroidogenesis is different between the male and female. So there is no reason, because there is no differences in the female treated with the paroxetine or the SSRI. So that will be extremely important also, because if we identify a therapy, may be also possibly different in the two genders.
I see. Um, since we know that PSSD also involves cognitive and emotional symptoms, will there be any efforts to study these other components of PSSD in the future?
Yeah, we are working on it. Indeed, as I told you,
Good to hear.
we we believe that the origin, the etiopathogenesis. So, what happens? I'm trying to explain with simple word.
I
This
understand.
is extremely complicated concept,
Yeah, you know, it takes a
and
lot of years to understand a lot of these
and
terminologies.
and so is we believe that the major compromission in the PSSD is at the level of the nervous system. So of course we are also working on the side effect that involve much more the cognitive, the emotional field, and so on.
Mhm. Okay. Um, now a lot of people are very curious about SFN.
Mm.
So SFN has been identified in some PSSD patients, and it's of great concern to a significant portion of the PSSD community.
Yeah.
Do you foresee any future possibilities of integrating SFN related research into your work? By the way, SFN standing for small fiber neuropathy. So, do you foresee correlating any of this into your research or collaborating with researchers who
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
specialize? Yeah.
Yeah. I am aware that some patients have been also tested for altered intraepidermal nerve fiber density test or peripheral nerve dysfunction. And of course, this may suggest peripheral neuropathy. Although we are not neurologists, we are neuroendocrinologists.
Hmm.
We have a quite experience in this subject. Indeed, we have also utilized this testing also in the animal model for different pathology. And moreover, we have also already published that at least a part, not all the patient, but a part of the PFS patient have peripheral neuropathy. And but when I explain this matter, I wish to start from one aspect.
Hmm.
I mean, we believe that and we see that on the basis of the symptoms reported for the PSSD patient, that the patients are not so homogeneous. I mean, they are a lot heterogeneous each other. And we believe that there is also some subcluster of different patients. So it is possible that there is peripheral neuropathy in one kind of the PSSD patient, but not in the other. Of
Hmm.
course, we have demonstrated that in the patient, so there is no specific clinical study that also demonstrated that in the PSSD. I mean, what we have in the PSSD patient are only occasional observation and singular observation. But from a scientific point of view, that may be true, but may be also not true. Because in many situations, also when I speak with the neurologist, the neurologist told me that, for instance, the intraepidermal nerve fiber density may also give false positive.
Hmm.
And so it is important to have a control clinical study in which we have the patient with similar characteristics and not different characteristic as occur normally in the PSSD patient, and then to evaluate this aspect. So maybe a possibility. What I wish to highlight that while for the PFS we have demonstrated a compromission in the penis, as I told you before, and but in the PSSD at the moment we have not seen any alteration in our experimental model. So that is the reason, because we believe that the sexual alteration in the PSSD are due much more to alteration in neural circuits that control the libido and the sex, instead of the act itself or the erection and so on. So that is a very big difference. Anyway, for the future, if you have the possibility, we have already planned a clinical study in Italy for the PSSD patient. So we wish also to analyze with the neurologist also this aspect, because it may be important. I'm not so confident that is important for the PSSD, but I mean, we will see what happens.
For sure, anything's better than nothing.
Yeah,
definitely have to find out more about that later. Report back. So to follow up with the SFN, the small fiber neuropathy, many patients have many question askers have also expressed interest in IVIG, which is intravenous immunoglobulin, because they've received SFN tests. So a lot of them are also wondering if there would be potential in exploring IVIG as part of these future studies.
Yeah, but that is the same question of the question before, but the SFN. I mean,
some people would like to clarify.
Of course, again, I'm not an immunologist, but I believe that the immunoglobulin may be also a therapy if an autoimmune reaction is really demonstrated. I mean, again, we need a clinical study, a controlled clinical study with the patient that also similar characteristics on the basis, and then we will see what happens on the autoimmune aspect. But we have also to consider one important thing, that it is really important to have a real characterization and to understand what really happens in the PSSD patient. Because we may intervene with a therapy only when there is a disimbalance of the molecules. If you have not alteration, but you suppose to have an alteration, and you intervene with a therapy, the situation may also make worse. And it's extremely important that to know what happens and then to apply a therapy for the alteration that you have seen, but not you have supposed to exist.
All right. So here's a question that I liked a lot, which was, according to your current research, taking SSRIs has an influence on the microbiome, which is associated with a change in neurosteroids. So which came first? Did the SSRIs lead to a change in the microbiome, or to a change in the neurosteroid activity first, which in turn influenced the microbiome, if that makes sense?
But this is difficult to say on the basis of the literature, because the gut microbiota axis has a biodirectional control. So there is some aspect from the gut that control the brain function and vice versa, also control of the brain on the gut. So we believe that the alteration, of course, we have to work in deep on this aspect, also in the close future. But we are very confident in the alteration of gut-brain axis, because we have the idea that to intervene with a therapy on the gut, and then to have an effect on the brain is much more easy than to intervene directly in the brain.
For sure. I think that's what a lot of people are definitely hoping for. I suppose that would end up leading to the next question, which is, there's also been a lot of people who are very curious about, FMT, fecal matter transplants. So that with regards to the changes in the microbiome. So do you figure there could be some potential in exploring FMT as a part of your future studies?
No, I mean, we believe that is a possibility. But you have also to take in consideration that FMT is only applied in specific gut disorder.
Okay.
And so we are, for the moment, we are exploring steroid-based therapy that intervene in the gut, and then, as I told you, on the brain function. Is this very similar approach that we are doing for the PFS. Of course, for the PFS, we have already identified the steroid, the candidate for the therapy, the allopregnanolone, and we have already published that if you treated with the allopregnanolone, we may reestablish the gut functionality, in the animal model in which we have suspended the finasteride. And now we are also in progress a manuscript in which we have also analyzed the reflect in the brain function. So I believe that also for the PSSD are more confident in a similar approach.
Okay. Do you think that you might be able to apply for research grants at this time? Like, for example, from Horizon Europe, have you had any success in this front? And if not, is there anything that the community can do to help with that?
The Horizon project. Okay, in the past I have had the grants for the Europe, but these grants are very competitive and in particular need a very big network of the researcher of different countries and also different universities. So at the moment, I believe that it's not only a scientific problem, but also a funding problem. It's very difficult to encourage my colleague to work on the PSSD. I mean, we are planning this clinical study, but this is a national clinical study and there is no support for this clinical study, so it's only based on the interest of the clinician. Of course, the scientific interest for the researcher is extremely important, but it's also extremely important how to funding the research. I mean, the money that the laboratory may receive. At this moment, all the national and international official agencies that normally support the biomedical research do not consider a priority the PSSD, but the same is also for the PFS, because it's considered like a rare disease. Of course, I think that is not rare. I think that we are seeing the peak of the iceberg, where when we see only a small part of the patient, and a lot of patients realize that they have not the PSSD, or also when discuss with the medical doctor say, okay, the PSSD does not exist, and so on.
Yeah.
So I believe that in this moment, the only possibility is only the donation from the patient. But of course, even if I understand that this is a very big effort for the singular patient to give donation to the PSSD network, it is also important that, in my opinion, the PSSD network in this situation did not disperse the resources available. So it is important to support, if you wish, the different laboratories, but the laboratories need to be integrated each other, and in particular needs to have a different expertise. I mean, our laboratory have a specific expertise, and we'll be very happy to collaborate with another laboratory with a different expertise. But if you have the same methodological approach in both laboratories, there is no reason to collaborate.
I see. So that perfectly lines up with the next question, which is, what could we as the community do to capture the interest of other labs to look into this condition?
To continue to collect the funds from the donation, and to try to do not disperse also these resources in many small rivers. I mean, I understand that because the situation is very unclear for the PSSD, every hypothesis are possible. But I mean, we have followed one hypothesis. I see that when I spoken with the patient, each patient have a different idea. Of course, we cannot follow all these different ideas, but we have to choose one hypothesis. And we choose one hypothesis when we believe that this hypothesis may have much more possibility in order to reach our target, to have success in this research.
Okay. With that said, with these funds, how are these funds that we're raising, the PSSD network is raising, being used? Can you possibly give us more details and a breakdown of where the money's going?
Of course, again, I understand that it's a very big effort for the donation, but this donation does not fully cover our cost. And for the materials, for the methodological approach that we used, and in particular do not cover the salary of the young researcher. We are not supported from the university that we have in the laboratory. So we tried to manage the budget using the donation, but using also the money coming from different resources. But I mean, it's not easy. I'm very clear. We are working on it because I am very scientifically interested in the matter. But if I see the budget, there is no reason, unfortunately, to work on the PSSD. But we go on.
Right. So more specifically, this funds, it doesn't, you said it doesn't go towards their salaries or anything, but does it go towards materials that are needed to conduct the studies?
We cover the cost of the materials.
Yeah.
We cover the cost for the animal model.
Yeah.
And we cannot cover the cost of the salary of the people.
Right,
I mean,
right. I understand that's a lot.
Because in the laboratory there is the fixed position where the salary is covered from the university.
Yeah.
Then we have the PhD students, we have the postdoc that are covered from our personally budget from the laboratory, but it's not the budget from the university.
Right.
But I mean, we receive from different resources, but if I receive the money from different resources, of course, then we have also to work on different projects. So we have not the possibility on the basis of the funding available to work only on the PFS and PSSD.
Okay. So what are the key challenges that you're facing that additional donations could overcome?
As I told you, we independently by the future donation, and we have already planned and partially also started to evaluate, to explore the possibility of the macroRNAs like a possible biomarker, as I told you before. Then we are also investigate the potential neuronal circuits that are leading, that control the sexual dysfunction in the animal model, and we are evaluating the sexual motivation, because in our opinion, at least for the male, is a problem of the libido, of the lack of libido, and we believe that to see the specific neural circuits that may be related with the sexual dysfunction may be also important also to identify how to intervene on this alteration of the neural circuits. Then we are working, as I told you, still on the gut-brain axis. In particular, now we are working on the signal that the gut exchange with the brain and vice versa. There is some specific marker that are important. Then we have already started, but we intend to implement this aspect, the observation on the female animal model, because we suppose that the situation in the female may be different than in male. And finally, we have already started the first experiments in which we are evaluating the possible protective effect of the pregnenolone on the PSSD. So at the moment, the possibility is to consider a steroid-based therapy for the PSSD, which at the moment is different in comparison to the PFS, even if the symptomatology is similar.
All right. I suppose with that said, other than donations, what can we as a community, the PSSD sufferers, do to help? Like, for example, one of the biggest things that we're trying to get people to do is report their symptoms to both their country's regulators and to the FDA, because as we know now that people from everywhere across the world can actually report to the FDA, along with that, reaching out to their MPs and other representatives. Do you have any opinions or thoughts on what more people can do to put this condition in the limelight?
I think that the patient have to disseminate the information about the symptomatology of the PSSD, because that is extremely important. Also, but is the same that with our data, we disseminate this observation to the scientific congress with our colleagues. But with the medical agency, it is also important that they report the symptomatology to this agency. I see that now also in your website, the FDA is also open to receive information and so on. So that I believe that is extremely important. That is extremely important. I'm not so confident when the single patient tried to contact the researcher to work on the PSSD, because the first reply from this researcher is, you have money, and then is the question of before we discussed it. And I believe that also because among the researcher know what is the expertise of the other researcher, and also whether a laboratory is normal, good, extremely good. And that is not, in my opinion, the real judge of the patient. But the patient have to disseminate the information with the medicine agency. That is extremely important, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Getting everybody to contact their country's regulator as much as possible. We've definitely had a big outreach with the community to try to get more and more people to do that. Right now, it seems to be the time to do it. And hopefully, if you're watching this and you haven't done it yet, I hope that you can do it. We'll leave a link in the description to show you how you can do it too. So with that said, in your view, are there currently any treatments or strategies that might help mitigate PSSD symptoms? A lot of people, as we know, are they're very antsy about that. People really want to get out of this, understandably so. You know, nobody wants to have this condition. It's tragic to say the least. But so do you think that there's anything that people can try, or do you think that supporting research and raising awareness is the primary path forward at this stage?
I believe that a therapy should be based on objective alteration. I mean, when we are sure that this alteration exists in the patient. So, in my opinion, it's extremely important also to characterize this patient because, as I told you, in many situations, what happens in one patient does not happen in other patients.
Mhm.
So there is a different group of patients. So for this reason, we need before to understand well what happens in the animal model because many analyses are only possible in the animal model, are not possible in the patient, and then to translate this observation in the patient via clinical study. Because also in literature, there is not a specific clinical study that well characterized the PSSD. But I mean, I believe if the patient told me, okay, I have these symptoms, but from a scientific point of view, it is important to demonstrate that these symptoms may occur. So, in my opinion, now at the moment, unfortunately, we have not a specific therapy for at least some symptoms of the PSSD. So I believe I don't wish to encourage the patient to try some new therapy because this new therapy may be also dangerous. I mean, may make also worse the situation. And at the moment, I think that I wish only to suggest I have very simple advices, but in many situations may also working well. And I believe that this is important, extremely important, a balanced diet, have to an healthy lifestyle, and then if they have the possibility to have also sporting activity. This last point is extremely important, in my opinion, because they have to avoid to focus too much on the symptoms. I think that is very difficult, but it is extremely important that the patient try also to not to be obsessive for
For sure.
the symptoms. And
For sure.
I mean, it's not simple, but it's important for the patient also to try to solve this aspect.
For
And
sure.
then with with the future, I hope to have a therapy.
For sure. I gotta say, I gotta admit, if anything, that I'm guilty of trying to get myself out of it, and I experimented a long time ago, and I regret it heavily. So
Mhm.
take it from me, if anything, to not do that, to play it safe because it's not worth it. You know what I mean? The grass isn't always greener. It can be dangerous. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, like Professor here said, just try to get your mind off of it as much as possible. Um, because you never know. You never
But
know.
also because a therapy that is good for one supposed PSD patient. I mean, I'm sorry, I use the word suppose PSSD patient because the PSSD patient is not based from a scientific characterization. It's based only on the possibility that they report a similar symptomatology.
Yeah,
And I believe that what may be good for one patient may be not good for
absolutely.
another patient.
Absolutely.
And if it's ineffective, there is no problem. But if they worsen the situation, that is a very big problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, just it's not always worth it. It's really not. I can't even begin to describe to you how much I regret trying to do something to, trying to experiment like that. So so right now, in my own opinion as well, with all the experiences that I've had and all the work that I've done, just just volunteering is the one thing that I can say is that helps. You know what I mean? Just getting this out into the real world, you know. Um,
Absolutely.
you know, it brings me a lot of I guess you could say satisfaction, to accomplish tasks, to every step forward through the mud, if it does feel like mud that we're stepping through. You know, with that said, all of that, are you optimistic for a treatment? What is the timeline on that, if you have one, if anything?
The timelines of the biomedical research does not reflect exactly the expectation of the patient. So I'm sorry, but you have to consider that for the other, this is a very complicated pathology because touch different domain. We believe that the main domain in the nervous system, so the idea is to address toward the disimbalance in the nervous system. But of course, we are doing our best. We are working a lot. Now my laboratory is practically working in major part on the PFS and PSSD, and we tried also to obtain observation that is important for the two diseases. But I mean, but I potentially very optimistic. I don't know how long we need to explore the field, and of course, if you have the possibility with the founding to be more dedicated on the PSSD, we are open to this possibility. I am optimistic because I think that in the last few years, there is a major understanding of the clinician for the PSSD. And also, I believe that also the knowledge on the PSSD is growing. So, for I understanding for the characterization of the PSSD, and I mean for the diagnostic marker that may be utilized from the clinician to say this is a PSSD, this is not PSSD, and then potentially for a therapy. Of course, a therapy may be also successful also if we are able also to counteract at least some of the different symptoms that are reported. I don't believe that we are so lucky to have a sort of molecule that is like a panacea, that is able to solve completely all the problem of the PSSD patient, but also because it is a very complicated and multifactorial, as I told you at the beginning of this observation, in my opinion, disease, a rare disease. That is also important to say. Anyway, I am optimistic, and it is the reason because we are also working on it, because we see that we may have a future.
For sure. And it's important to note that the more people, the more patients that we can get to actually to stand up and fight and advocate for ourselves, for all of ourselves as a community, the more quickly that we can get out of this. We need to place the pressure and just get the whole world to know about this as quickly as possible. And that's definitely going to be a whole lot better than the opposite, than not doing anything. So to end this interview that we've got here, last question, what are you most excited about that's upcoming to investigate?
As I told you, we are organizing this clinical study. And now we are writing I have organized a network of different clinicians. We have put together neurologists, endocrinologists, gastroenterologists, and psychiatrists, because we wish to analyze these 4 different domains. And we are writing the protocol because we need the permission from the ethical committee to perform this clinical study. And I believe that this clinical study will be extremely important to characterize the patient. And we see, for instance, when also in the patient there is an alteration in the gut microbiota, there is an alteration in the peripheral nerves, and is only a problem, as we hypothesize, of the brain, altered brain function. And we also believe that the endocrinological aspect, I mean the classical endocrinology marker, are important. For the moment, we intend to start with a clinical study addressed only to the male, but we do not consider the female because we don't think that is not so important, and the opposite. We believe that is important, but we wish to dedicate to understanding before what happens in the male patient, and in meantime to see in the experimental model if in the female animal model is different from the animal model. If you have differences in the future, we may also think to a specific clinical study for the female. But for the female, it is extremely difficult also to evaluate the sexual function, because in the male is a very evident with the erection, with the libido, and so on. The sexual function is in the female is much more difficult to understand and so to study. So anyway, we will see. I'm very confident if you have success to have this clinical study, but of course it will be a national clinical study. But in Italy, we have a very important community of the patient, a group of patients. So then we will see what happens.
That's definitely really great to hear. Hearing about a clinical study upcoming from you was definitely not something I was expecting, but I'm definitely really, really glad to hear it. So I'm absolutely looking forward to any updates on that and to seeing that research. Well, that seems to just about conclude the interview here. So, Professor, seriously, thank you. A huge, huge thank you for joining us. And big thanks as
Thank
well
you
to
for,
sorry, say again.
Thank you. Thank you to you.
Of
Thank you to you
course.
and to the community. I hope to be helpful, not only with our work, but also in explain this aspect. Of course, it's not so easy to communicate in the simple words our research to the patient, but I believe that now we may have a very general overview on our research.
Absolutely. It's really good to put a face to the name, a face to the voice, and and yeah, so huge thanks to everyone at the PSSD network for making this happen as well. And thank you to everybody for watching. Sincerely hope that this helps to answer many of your questions. If you guys would like to contact us, if you have any questions, please email us at info@pssdnetwork.org. Leave a link in the description to that as well. So, yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good day.